Okay, I'm on. I'm on. Are you?
Yeah, I'm recording.
All right, you're going. Let's do this. All right, so this may be coming out a little earlier than perhaps expected if you follow the channel and you follow my kind of upload schedule, but I think that we both agreed that we just really needed and wanted to talk about this, and that is the travesty that was the PS5 Pro's announcement. I'll just start with a little context. I don't even have a regular PS5. You do, though, correct?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So I have three ways in which I want to break this travesty down. And the three categories are a physical media discussion in general, and why physical media is important and why it's good to own things that you pay for. And then I want to go into the PS5 Pro itself and its extreme lack of features and kind of the clown show that was the reveal of it and that whole presentation, which I don't know if you've watched, but I have, and I've watched.
I just watched the the reveal of like the PS5 itself, like
Right.
just like that ending little cinematic thing they did.
Yeah. So I watched the whole like presentation, which was like 9 minutes long, and then there's also a YouTuber who I've watched forever, who's awesome, named Pete Dorr, who did a nice little breakdown of it, and he was not too happy with the PS5 Pro either.
I couldn't find. I don't think you find many who are too happy with the PS5 Pro.
Yeah, and Pete Dorr is someone who I've watched since I was like in early high school, and his game room is one that I've just admired so much, and it was kind of how I would try, and a lot of decisions that he made with like storing games and stuff were kind of things I tried to replicate in my own over time. So really like him, and yeah, he came out with a video about it really quick, and then you texted like, hey, do you want to talk about this? And I'm like, yeah, I sure do. So the features, and then the last thing is the pricing, and that's kind of a quicker topic, but there's just some very odd things with the pricing of it, specifically talking about like other regions. So but we can get into the physical media discussion first. So
Yeah,
I will be editing the episode, obviously, and I will likely show at least some images of my game room, and I would love to show some of your collection, because I know you got yourself a nice RPG, PS2, PS4 collection going.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can send a picture of my single shelf because everything else is. I mean, this might be blasphemy, but it's just because I don't have the space right now. But
Yeah.
everything else is in drawers.
yeah, it happens.
Carefully like placed.
Yeah, it happens. I mean, I've run out of space on bookshelves, and my NES shelf is a bit chaotic because I have 200 NES games, and I got to stack them up on top of each other before I actually build like my own shelf at some point in my life. So I totally get it. But you can send me like your nice shelf.
Yeah.
And
Not just a drawer of like random games that I couldn't bother to sort through.
right. But there's an importance to physical ownership. Not just obviously me and you care about that, but I'll explain a little something that I'm not somebody who, outside of like media, right? Outside of games and music and books, I don't own a lot of things. I'm not like a super materialistic person when it comes to that. The exception that I kind of make to that rule is media. And I think it's very important to own things like music, and to own things like video games, and to own things like books. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but I've got some collections,
I'm kind of the same. Yeah, I'm kind of the same, especially like I wouldn't consider myself like to be super materialistic with most things. Like I'm not gonna go out to a store and be like, oh, I want that thing.
Right.
I consider myself to be pretty minimalist with like, especially like, I mean, it might be the freaking stereotype of a single male in his 20s, but like with furniture and shit.
You got
like,
a lawn chair that you play your video games on?
Yeah, the white plastic chair.
yeah, exactly. That's in your house.
On an uncarpeted floor. And
yeah. And one like Dave Matthews Band poster on the wall that's like halfway hanging off, and then a
like
crappy
Steve
TV.
Miller Band,
yeah,
unframed.
Yeah, unframed.
Just a single
taped up
nail
poster
into the drywall.
So picture that. That's what your house looks like.
Yeah. But yeah, like with like media and stuff, and then I've also gotten into like collecting like figures and
Yeah, sure.
kind of what are they called, model kits, and well, specifically for Trails, because big
Right.
Trails fan, always have to mention it in at least one episode.
Yeah, well, you have your series that you collect your merch for. I mean, you can't do it for every
Yeah.
game, so you kind of got to pick a game and have that be your thing.
Yeah, and it helps that Trails, even though they have a whole bunch of merch that, like, I'm not super interested in, like, the acrylic stands and all that.
Right.
The stuff that I'm interested in, it comes out pretty... I mean, granted, when I started collecting them, they had 2 figures, and now, I don't know, I guess they got into a partnership at the... What's it called? I think Kotobukiya, or however you pronounce it, which is like
Kotobukiya.
pretty big figure. Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
big, like, figure
Yeah,
maker.
I know that.
And now they're, like, releasing, like, one every month, and I'm like, dog... I don't know if I have the funds for this.
Yeah, for real. I was big into, when I was in high school, I decided, like, I'm not going to pick, like, necessarily, like, Mario or Sonic or, like, somebody with, like, a ton of merch, but I decided to pick something that was, like, kind of doable, but a very popular game still, but in terms of merch, there wasn't a ton, at least at the time, 10 years ago, and that was Plants vs. Zombies, and I had a solid, because I love that game. I know it's, like, kind of like a, like a crappy like phone kids game, whatever. But dude, that is like one of my most played games on Steam. I love the original Plants vs Zombies at least, and I went after like a lot of merch from that series. And there, like I said, there wasn't like an overabundance of it, so it was enough to like collect and to be like excited to get things when you could afford them and this, that, and the other. But it wasn't overwhelming. Is basically what I'm getting at. So.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing, too, with, like, collecting in physical media is that it also limits your overconsumption, right? With like, the world of streaming and everything, it's just all about just going and consuming forever, whereas with physical media, it's like, well, I can't buy any more Target bookshelves, so...
Yeah. Yeah, I also think it helps with, like, well, I wouldn't say it super helps with backlogs, but like, because my backlog is insurmountable by this point.
Yeah.
I do think it helps because, and I might just be different on this, but I don't like drop games. Like, if I buy a game, I'm gonna play it through to the end, even if I don't like it. Like, that's happened multiple times. Like, Elden Ring is not a game that I particularly like, even though I like a lot of FromSoft. I actually love a lot of FromSoft.
Oh boy, dislikers, come on in. Yeah. He doesn't like, this guy here doesn't like Elden Ring. I don't know. I don't care about any of those games. But anyway, go ahead.
I don't know. But yeah, I didn't like Elden Ring, but I played it through. I played it through twice.
Wow.
Even like to try to give it a fair shot, and I even played the DLC because I like FromSoft stuff, and I understand that a lot of my certain things like. I typically prefer New Game Plus runs in FromSoft games because I feel like it's more fun when you have a build down and it's right. Instead of just like spending the first part of the game kind of.
This is how different we are, though.
Trying to find a sword that you like. The what?
This is how different we are because I cannot tell you if I've ever even in my entire life done 2 playthroughs of a game and played the DLC and then been like, yeah, I didn't really like it. I cannot tell you how different we are in that regard.
Yeah. For me it's like trying to give it a fair shot. Like, I think in my head, and I know this isn't correct because obviously a part of like a piece of media's value is retaining your attention and your enjoyment.
Yeah.
So I do think that like you can offer fair criticism if you haven't fully consumed the thing that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Granted, like if you have only done like 2 minutes and you're like the whole game is ass, then I'll start to like
my Mega Man 8 review. I played like a little halfway through, maybe a little more than half, and I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to finish it another time. And everybody thinks that I like absolutely hate that game, and now it's like a joke on my channel that I hate that game, but because I didn't, but everybody just said that I did. So
well, you did because you texted me afterwards and you were like, "Man, I hate that game so much."
Oh my god! Yeah, screenshot the text, put him up. Even though I'm the one editing, so I would never dox myself like that. Yeah. The real text probably said, well, I think I'm done trying to record Mega Man 8 for this video. So.
But yeah, it's so like I don't drop games, so I like to complete them to the end.
Yeah.
And I do think it helps that like I think part of that is because I like to buy the physical thing, and I
Yeah.
think even if it's like just for display purposes, because I have a lot of duplicates like of games. Like I have like PS4 and PS5 versions of some
Oh,
games. I
yeah,
have
and your Breath of the
like
Wild collection.
yeah, my whole freaking Zelda collection and my um, Trails collection, where it's like I can't even play some of the games. Like I have the Japanese PSP versions
Yeah, but it looks
of
cool.
the first 5 Trails games. Yeah, and I can't even play them. Like I don't even have a Japanese PSP.
That console's region free.
Is it PSP region through?
I'm
I thought
almost.
that kind of started with the PS3
Well, I'm
and like the Vita.
almost. God, now you're making me double back. I'm almost certain that the PSP and the Vita are region free, but I might be wrong. But I know the PS4 is.
Well, regardless, I can't even play it anyway
You
because my
gotta read
PSP
it. It's an
broke.
RPG.
Because my PSP broke because the battery just like went
Oh,
on that thing
yes, and
from
because it's
years of not using it.
kind of a finicky system because it uses a disc. It's
Yeah.
I'm not the hugest fan of the hardware of the PSP. I mean, I would say software wise, that is a really solid handheld. It's got some really awesome games.
I do like the overall like design of the PSP,
Yeah.
like the visual design of the PSP.
Oh yeah, the feel of it. I'm just mainly criticizing
Yeah.
that it uses discs, right? And
Yeah.
in the spirit of physical media, that is obviously like a downside is that disc based stuff and yada yada. But the PSP's physical games are so cheaply made because they have those white plastic covers on them. And then I'm sure
the
you've
UMDs.
seen them when they come off, and then it's like a plastic skeleton around a disc.
Yeah.
It's
Well, I was trying
they're
to buy.
horrible.
Yeah, I was trying to buy. I think it was one of the Gag Harp trilogy from the Legend of Heroes.
Yeah.
But the guy who I was buying it from sent me like a message, and he was like, "Hey, like I know you bought this, but I just want to let you know, I like tried to test it before I shipped it to make sure because I hadn't played in a while,
Yeah.
and it was not spinning at the UMD,
Right.
and I was like, oh man, that kind of sucks." And then he like sent me one later. He's like, "Nah, wait, replace it. It's all good. It works now. It's just a
That's
plastic bit."
Right.
But,
So yeah, they're
it's
awful. But
yeah,
the Vita cards are fine, and then they're like the Switch cards and stuff, And I'm a big like cartridge guy. I would say. I mean,
Yeah.
the early CD consoles definitely give me a little bit of anxiety just because they're getting pretty far up there in age, and you hear about like disc rot and stuff. And obviously, that's kind of the argument against physical media is that it can break, but. You know what the argument for physical media is? You do not have a guarantee of your digital media forever either.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can just pull the plug and think about the Xbox 360 store, which we talked about last time. I think it was last time where I like frantically made sure to get that Black Ops Zombies map pack on my hard drive
Oh, yeah.
and make sure I had
Well, you
Doritos
need
Crash
that.
Course, the essentials.
well, that's a necessity.
yeah, the essentials on my 360
How can
before
you
the store
live in
closed.
life without? How can you live in life without Resurrection?
Or
Featuring
Doritos
all four
Crash
World at
Course.
War Zombies maps plus the moon.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like had to make sure. So despite the the limitations of physical media breaking down, easier than a digital media, I would still say that physical is the way to go because you have the ability to sell it. I mean, it feels so bad just like throwing 60 at a digital game.
Yeah,
and when that's
I
the
think
only
that
option.
No.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think there's 2 points on that I want to touch on. One is with I think an important thing to remember is that, for me personally, I am a huge proponent for physical media and for owning physical media. I like owning it. I like displaying it. I like collecting it.
Yeah.
But I also do know the importance of storing digital versions of the media for like archiving it.
Oh,
and all
preservation.
Like, I think-
yeah, of course.
yeah,
well, I mean,
preservation,
dude, like
that's the
I do
word.
my scans of my manuals on my reviews. You know.
Yeah, and I find that to be very important. I think most people, I mean, I've talked to everybody who's a big physical media proponent, but I don't think anyone's like, nah, get rid of the digital ones. I think,
Right.
and an issue that kind of crops up in like arguments against it that I've kind of seen is that when people kind of argue against physical media, like they've had a lot of stuff that breaks and they much prefer digital media, It's like, okay, that's completely understandable. That's fine. If you like digital media, if you prefer it, that's completely fine, and that's great for you.
Yes.
The issue is with certain things, there's a push to get rid of physical media.
Right. We
But
need
there's
both.
no push to get rid of digital media. Like I haven't really
Right.
heard many physical people who are like, man, I really like physical media. Go now, we got to get rid of them digitals,
Yeah, no,
them
it's
digis, man.
the Digimon, but it's you need both. I totally agree with that
Yeah,
statement, and with the whole preservation aspect and all that, and kind of being able to incorporate both. And like I said, I do that very much so with my videos, where I buy the physical copy, but then I do digital scans of the cover and the artwork and all that, and I'm able to make my own little archive out of it. And obviously, we are sharing our thoughts through a digital media, through YouTube and everything. And I have a great example. Last weekend, my girlfriend and I were hanging out, and we were a little bored, and we were like, all right, we wanted to play some games. And there is a collection on the Switch called Clubhouse 51 Games or whatever, Clubhouse Games 51, something like that. It's a bunch of board games and some other fun stuff. Yeah, and there's even a Wii Bowling clone on there. There's a bunch of good stuff on there, especially the favorites of ours are backgammon and billiards, obviously, because what else do you do on a Saturday night? Am I right? So anyway, it is a collection of board games that you can also, because it's on the Switch, obviously play off the TV, and play it just on the Switch itself. To me, that is the perfect game to just own digitally. I'm pretty sure there is a physical version of it. But do I care if I have a collection of board games with backgammon and Hanafuda and checkers on a physical Switch card, which aren't even that, the cases aren't even it's not like it's, oh wow, look at this beautiful piece of art, it's just screenshots of the board games, right? It's nothing amazing. And it's a game too that when we got it, we were like, oh my gosh, this will be great for when we're traveling. So it makes it so I have to worry about one less thing while traveling because it's already on the Switch. So in that instance, I'm like, this is great. I'm glad I bought this game digitally. But when I bought the last Call of Duty that I bought brand new was Black Ops Cold War. And I hate that I don't have a physical copy of that game. So I really think it doesn't matter game to game. And therefore, you're totally right. You need both. You need both options.
Yeah, I think... Yeah, and I think for games that you care about a little more, it's better to get the physical. One of the ones that got me a little upset was I don't know how much knowledge you have on the Yakuza games. You probably see me playing
a little bit just from you.
Yeah. So Yakuza is a series that I really love, and I've kind of haven't really played many of the new ones recently because there's a little bit of a shift, and they're kind of the lead guy kind of left, and I'm not saying those games are bad because I haven't played them,
Right.
But I just got a little burned out because I played a bunch of them back to back, and I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah, me with Mega Man, and when I got to the eighth one,
But anyway, there was this whole thing of back when the series wasn't that big, on the PS3 era.
Right.
Sega didn't release a physical copy of Yakuza 5 in the West. It was only digital.
Right.
And that was a huge thing for a while. And then the series became big after Yakuza 0.
Right.
More people started getting into it. They started getting better sales. And when they remastered the three PS3 ones, Yakuza 3, 4, and 5, they actually gave you, with that, if you got the physical version of the remastered on the PS4, I don't know if they did it for the other, for Xbox and shit. I don't even know if there's a physical version for that.
Right.
But on the PS4, they gave you an empty PS5 case with an English art and all that for Yakuza 5, which I thought was really cool because you could put it on a shelf if you have 3 and 4. I thought that was such a cool thing.
That is cool.
And then for some reason, when they released now this series is called Like a Dragon, which is more its Japanese name because they switched it to Yakuza back in the PS2 era in order to sell more. Anyway, when they released Like a Dragon Gaiden, which is I want to say Yakuza 6.5 or 7.5 or whatever. Anyway, when they released that in English, only digital, no physical version.
Right.
And that one ticked me off a little bit because I'm you went through this whole thing of we never released Yakuza 5 in the West, and it was a big thing, and we gave you a free empty PS3
acting
case
like
for
they
Yakuza
care.
5.
Yeah.
And then suddenly this happens
Right.
years later, and it's I I don't know how I feel about that. And so I like legit. I still don't own uh, an quote unquote English, well, really a North American version of that game.
Right.
I own a Chinese version with an
Uh-huh.
English label, and I own
Excellent.
the Japanese version with
Right.
all in Japanese.
Right. Right.
Um, but it's like stuff like that is what kind of gets me a little bit because it's like it's a series I care about, and it's a series that I like to collect for. Like I like having like I have the steel books for some of them. I have this like art book for Yakuza 6.
Mm-hmm.
And then like suddenly there's this kind of a gap in my collection. Yeah, I can put them on a shelf, but like if I do the Japanese one, it's going to be all of them are in English. Then you just have one that's the spines in Japanese and kanji, and then
Right. Right.
or if I do the Chinese version, it just has this big red label on the side that says
Mm-hmm.
English version.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
uh, but yeah, it's like so yeah, it's I do think it goes by game to game because like there's stuff like that, and then there's stuff like I don't really
Clubhouse
care about
51.
getting like
You know.
yeah like Clubhouse 51 or like if I wanted to play like a Mario Party game, I wouldn't really care as
Yeah.
much if I had the physical version.
Not as much.
I'm
At
not
least
really a
if
huge
it's
Mario
not.
Party.
If it's one of the newer Mario parties, it's whatever. But like I gotta have
Yeah,
my
that's what I meant. I don't,
physical copy
yeah,
of
like
Mario
a,
Party.
oh, like
4,
a GameCube
baby.
Mario
Yeah,
Party.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
like obviously I got to keep that.
the obvious thing to point out with this too is that with the secondhand market and with all these games and stuff that we love, we love games that are older than us. And my whole channel like is
Yeah,
is about that. Initially, obviously, I've been doing some like PS2 stuff, which is after I was born. But like the NES, the SNES, like those consoles are older than me, and I love them. And how did I ever buy those games? Well, through the secondhand market on like eBay and Amazon when independent sellers would sell on Amazon. I don't know if that's still a thing, but whatever. I don't use
yeah. No,
Amazon.
they still do.
Yeah. Okay.
I use Amazon for. I mean, it's hit or miss because a lot of them don't require like pictures and stuff.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I've gotten
So.
some. I got like Final Fantasy 7 and I think Final Fantasy 8
Yeah.
used off at Amazon. They were actually really in really good condition.
So.
Those were gambles though.
You know.
But yeah, I think their refurbished market for like consoles is actually pretty good
Yeah. That's
because
good.
they have like
So.
a guarantee system for that.
All of that stuff exists because of physical media, and there's this kind of unfortunate thing where in our society like nostalgia is like chastised, and you're told that like you're only supposed to be focusing on like right now and the future, and so you can't ever like look back at the past. And that's the thing, man, is that like when all these like digital stores close, it's going to be time to close up shop. You can never get your cool games that you loved from the PS6 or whatever, whenever that comes out, or PS5
Yeah.
Pro, in 10, 20 years, because like I said, we just saw it with the Xbox 360. And so then, of course, the other part is that physical media gives consumers options, and the big boys, the big companies, hate us to have options, and they hate the fact that we can sort of control the price of games when it's the used market. And if you're forced to buy from only a digital marketplace, then the companies have 100% of the control and the consumers have none. And that is why I absolutely hate the notion of digital only. I don't mind buying a digital game here and there with the option. It's the digital only that is so frustrating.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you also touched upon. Oh, sorry. I think you also touched upon a good point there with the kind of storefronts going down. And I think especially what kind of scares me about that is we've seen certain companies are like, they're getting a little bit better with like kind of remaking or remastering old games and putting them on systems.
Yeah, like Katamari Damacy.
Yeah, but like I think that's like a heel turn from like the PS4, Xbox One era,
Yeah.
where that wasn't the big thing. If you go back to the PS3 era and like the Xbox 360 and the Wii, you had so many like the you could play a ton of PS1 and PS2 games, not just through backwards compatibility on the PS3, but like just through PlayStation Network.
Oh, yeah,
like, there's
yeah,
so
yeah.
many PS1 classics and PS2 classics you can get. Like, you can get Persona 3 FES. You can
Yeah.
get most of the SMT games. You can get Xenogears.
Yeah.
You can get basically all the Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation 1.
Right. I'll tell you,
Um,
Nintendo's pretty
and
good
then-
about it with the Switch Online thing, having a lot of...
Yeah, but I mean, it's still it's still not as good as the virtual console. Like
Oh
in
yeah,
terms
of
of
course not.
a
Yeah.
selection. Like maybe it's better in terms of like maybe the emulations are a little better. Maybe it's like because I think the think like it's better. Like Majora's Mask or something is a little better for speedrunners because it runs better on
Sure. You know.
MSO than it does on like the virtual console. Which yeah, fine. But at the same time, like you're not getting like all the stuff you had on the virtual console on the Wii on Nintendo Switch Online
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you for sure. So
or the 3DS too. Like
yeah.
that one had a
Well, and that
bunch of
was
like
there's another problem, that we ran into with digital purchasing is that like the Wii U and the 3DS had like separate eShops for the longest time, and then eventually they were like, you know what? Maybe we'll integrate them. Maybe we'll actually
yeah
integrate them for once. And there was just this whole mess, and it's like, yeah, you don't need that if you have just physical games, So
yeah
you're creating so many more problems by making it digital only. So I mean, we are getting on like 26 minutes of talking about this physical media discussion, and it's fine. But I want to get into our second topic because I feel like we're kind of beating the horse here. But I know it's something that we're both passionate about, and we're mad that the PS5 Pro has no disc drive. And I also heard that the PS5 with the disc drive now is selling out everywhere because everyone's panicked and it's like, oh, I gotta get it.
And the scalpers have already gotten the disc drives. The detachable ones for the Pro.
So what I have learned now too is that I am pretty much committed to just skipping this generation, and because now it's like hard to get a PS5 again, and obviously I want one with a disc drive. And so now that this has happened, and obviously there were scalpers when it came out in 2020, and it was impossible to find one too, I just need to skip this generation because I need to wait for this to cool off, wait for the PS6 to come out, then I'll go and get a PS5 used on eBay with a disc drive. A built-in one.
That's another issue is we don't even know what the PS6 is going to have.
Well, and that's kind of the implication is like, oh, is that going to be a digital-only console? In that case, I'm done.
Yeah.
But my other issue with the PS5 Pro, outside of this physical media discussion, which of course is the most important thing, but the presentation was laughably bad in the sense that they talk about these like graphical improvements. And this really makes me think about when we were growing up and when I was a kid and I had an N64, and that was like the first console I ever played, and then I had a GameCube. And I knew as a kid, I'm like, okay, when I play the games on the N64, they look pretty bad compared to when they look on the GameCube. I had both systems kind of simultaneously when I was younger. And, I just knew that the N64 graphics were like so much worse, and that jump was humongous. And then obviously the jump from like the NES to the Super Nintendo is humongous. You look at Kirby's Adventure, or whatever it's called, on the NES, and then Kirby Superstar on the SNES, and it's like, oh my god, where did they find all these colors? It's just so amazing. That's how I feel when I play that game. I'm like, this is like the most colorful freaking game of all time. But and it's
where do they find the pixels?
Yeah, seriously. There's such an upgrade from all these generations and generations. We are so done with that because now they're presenting to us this $700 console, and they are like, look here when I zoom in on these cars on the street in Spider-Man. Look at that detail. And I gotta tell you, from what I've noticed, the thing now, so back in the day, of course, it was about bits, right? It's 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit consoles, right? Now the word that I'm hearing thrown around like that, where you don't really know what it is, unless you're kind of shown it, is the phrase ray tracing. And I gotta tell you how little I give a crap about ray tracing. What did you say?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say FPS because that was thrown around.
That's a big one too. Yeah, the frames are a big one too because you have a number, right? So it's 60 FPS, 120 FPS. It's just like bits, right? That's a good one too, for sure. But the thing that I hear is ray tracing all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, again, it's something like FPS where it's something I don't notice until it's pointed out to me. Or like if I play, like, the only time I've ever noticed a difference in like ray tracing, and I still don't even know if that was the thing that was the difference.
See, you can't even fully tell.
Yeah, no, I don't even know what it is. I think it was from when I played like, because and this is another thing that's gonna get. I mean, I don't know how people on your channel are gonna react to this because I don't know if they, I don't know if they're more retro gamers or whatnot.
I
But
think my audience is typically older than me, so
okay,
I've noticed that. I've looked at my data, and my audience is typically in like their 30s and stuff because I do a lot of NES and SNES. But yeah,
yeah. But so I like, and I know this is a gaming sin of the highest order.
uh-huh.
I really liked Cyberpunk 2077 when it came out.
When it came
I
out,
really liked that game. Yeah, I played it. All right,
were
listen.
you able to get
I'm not
through
gonna say
it?
like my experience is the same for everybody. I played that game like after just the first hotfix is the first time I played that game,
Right.
which is like a week after it released, basically. I played that game on a base PS4 from like launch, like when they launched the PS4, maybe like
Wow.
a few months later.
Yeah.
I played that game off of that, and I rarely ran into like game breaking glitches until like maybe the end of the game when it crashed to the credits, and I was like, oh, that's a weird place to
Well,
crash.
you know, that's if you're gonna do it.
Yeah, I was like, okay. But I really liked Cyberpunk when it released, and then they released a PS5 version where they added a bunch of stuff, they fixed a few of the glitches, and they like improved the graphics. They added DualSense capabilities, which and
Right.
this is another thing again, in digital preservation too, which is another point, which I can briefly go over. But that one, like, I could tell a difference in like the lighting and stuff, which I think is what ray tracing kind of does.
Yeah, sure.
Between like it was like you, I could tell like when I was walking, I was like, the lighting feels more natural. Like it actually feels like the sun is shining down, and not just
Right.
like, oh, they put the big light bulb in the skybox, you know.
Uh-huh.
But and quickly on the point of game preservation, because this is something I may or may not talk about in my hopefully upcoming video,
Hey.
which is that I really loved Cyberpunk 1.6, which is like the last of Cyberpunk 1.0, which is
Uh-huh.
like when it released. When they did the DLC, they did Cyberpunk 2.0. They completely revamped the game,
Right.
and they changed so many things about it. And
Wow.
I hated it.
Yeah,
I thought
then
they
it's
made
gone.
it really boring.
Right, and then
They
the
made it.
version you like is gone.
Yeah, and now here's the thing: the only way I can play 1.6 now is on PC. Like you can actually downgrade to 1.6, which I really
Right.
like, and I honestly think that should be a thing on
Yeah.
consoles, the ability to downgrade to earlier versions.
That's pretty cool, yeah.
Or, because I have the disc, I can play the PS4 version on 1.6, because there is no
Ah,
2.0 on PS4.
Yep, they didn't update
Or
it.
I could just stop the thing from updating, but then it
Right.
wouldn't be 1.6, which is annoying. But anyway,
It's
if it goes up
like
to
my
1.6.
it's like my Black Ops 2 Wii U discussion from the
Yeah.
last time where it was like
Yeah.
not supported, and so it has like goofy stuff like your own swarm can kill you, but
Yeah.
it is like the Wayback Machine, and I'm going back to like December 2012 with that. Whereas if you play the game on 360 or PS3, you're playing the fully updated version with, you know, all the patches and all the gun balancing tweaked and all that. But you know, you get kind of an older version on the Wii U. So
Yeah, yeah. But the thing that kind of bothers me is like that the PS5 version, version of 1.6 is gone. You can't play that anymore unless you
Right.
like, maybe like homebrew your PS5.
yeah, you
Like,
got to do some
and
crazy
maybe-
stuff.
and I know-
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know like some people are like, oh, there's not really much. Like legitimately, the only thing that you're pretty much missing is DualSense support, which I do think was really cool. But at the same time, it's like from a preservation standpoint, that version's gone.
Right.
And yeah, maybe you pretty much get the same version on the PC just without DualSense support. But again, point still stands. That specific PS5 version is gone. You can't play it unless you like homebrew your PS5. And I think that's a shame.
Right.
Because I consider I really like the driving controls in that game, and I know a lot of people don't like that.
Right.
I like that it's almost got like ice physics on the road, and it's really fun when you get the hang of it. And I consider it like a version of like gaming therapy. It was just like when I was like bored, or I was just kind of feeling like I don't really feel like doing anything. I would just pop in Cyberpunk and just drive around Night City,
Right.
and it was like soothing to me. And then they changed the driving controls for every car to be super heavy, and it was just not fun. Anyway, sorry for going off on that.
No, it's all good. I mean, it's a good point, you know, and that's we're really getting into like the nuances there for sure of like digital versus physical stuff. And I mean, the whole deal, too, with, like, updates and all that, yada, yada, compared to, you know, the SNES, you fire up good old Kirby Superstar, and it's just the same game that it was in 1990, whatever, 3. Yeah. So, my point, though...
Or they like Atlas as they re-release a whole new game.
Yeah. My point, though, with this whole deal is that, okay, ray tracing, blah, 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 cars in the background, blah, blah, blah. Shut up and just make good games. Like, seriously, that's the only thing I could think of was just stop telling me about this crap. When are the good games coming out?
Yeah. And I think it is like, because that joke of like the PS5 has no games because there aren't really very many PS5 exclusives.
Right.
Because like any exclusive, quote unquote, exclusive for the PS5 is also typically on PS4, and then if it's too high end for the PS4, it's probably going to be on PC. Like God of War, Ragnarok, Final Fantasy 16, most likely Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. Eventually, like
16's on a PC.
Yeah, 16 was released on PC.
Oh, well, then I have no reason to get the console. I forgot that it was on PC. I was like, I had considered buying one to get Final Fantasy 16, and I know that you don't like it anyway.
Yeah,
so.
I do not like Final Fantasy 16. I was about to say, like, yeah, you don't need to get it.
Yeah, I had considered it. I'm like, yeah, maybe that'd be worth getting one, dude. So, I mean, I know people are hyped about this Astrobot game, so maybe that's it. But
yeah, maybe that'll be the one.
Yeah,
but I have heard good things about Astrobot. They say it's like kind of like. It's like the 3D platformers of yore.
Yeah, it looks like it, you know? So,
yeah.
Real
it's got
quick,
some Super Mario Sunshine controls.
Totally. Let's get into the last topic, and then, you know, we can make this one a little shorter, because it's mostly about the PS5 and not so much like our discussions about life.
But we can expand it. If you need me to yap, I can make it an hour.
Yeah, for real. Wow. The last thing I wanted to touch on was the pricing and how this is like when I think that they asked. I heard something somewhere that when the Apple like Vision Pros or whatever came out and they're $3,000, like as much as a bad like used car, like you can get like some used cars for $3,000, like nothing like fancy by any means, but like the Vision Pros cost nearly
Lamborghini,
as much
baby.
as a used car, right? And apparently they people like asked like the CEO, Tim Cook or whatever about that, and they're like, do you think this is affordable? And he's like, oh, I think it's affordable. Like he doesn't even know. I've heard that. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that he's like just has no idea if the Vision Pros are affordable at all. And it's just like, oh, I guess it's $3,000. Well, I don't know. This feels like that, where it's like, okay, the PS5 is laughed at because it's a console that nobody could ever find, is way too expensive when it came out, and it came out at a horrible time because it came out in 2020 when everybody's business went under because of the pandemic, and then there's no games for it. So now you're releasing a version where I could see the trucks in the background better. You took the disk drive out, and you're forcing me now to abandon a theoretical, because I don't have one, but a theoretical physical collection of games that I already have, and now you are charging $700, which is like, did they not learn from the PS3? Like, doesn't this sound kind of like when the PS3 came out? Here's the difference, though. The PS3 came out, it had a gazillion features, even if people didn't really care about half of them. But it had so much built into it.
It was backwards compatible with the PS1 and a lot of PS2 games, I believe, when it first came out.
I think it was all of them native. I'm pretty sure it had a PS2 built into it when it came out. Like,
yeah, and then they had it was a Blu-ray player,
which was big at the time.
Had.
Yeah, big at the time for sure.
And that was the big feature, was that they were Blu-ray discs now.
And then I want to pull up this. Hey, go ahead.
I was just gonna say and on the price thing, I have heard some people say well, if you trade in your old PS5.
Oh, shut up.
First off, that's assuming that you have an old PS5.
Right, I don't. Like, what if I wanted to?
Why would I trade in?
Now,
Yeah. Why would I trade in the one that has the disc drive on it that works perfectly fine for games that that has the promise of the idea that it might run at 60 frames a second,
right?
Even though it might not.
And I've seen. And you have to update the games, and only so many games support the PS5 Pro and all that. I heard that too.
And it's first off, I don't really. This might be like a thing that I know this is a point of contention for a lot of people. I honestly don't give two shits. Sorry, I cursed again.
It's fine.
If a game runs at 60 frames or 30, I honestly
don't
care.
care. And when they show all these things, it's like I don't even notice. Like when they're showing them side by side, I'm like,
the only time I notice is when I'm playing a game that's 60 frames, and then I go to a game that's 30 frames. For the first 5 minutes of playing, I'm like, something about it is like a little slower, and then after that, I don't notice it.
Yeah, your eyes just
I'm just absorbed into the game.
Right. That's the thing.
It's like only the first 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, the camera, I can tell like it's moving slower, but it's like from going from like when I played Elden Ring and I didn't like it, and I went back to play Bloodborne because that's my favorite FromSoft game.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, I can tell the difference here. Like obviously, Bloodborne's capped at 30.
Yeah.
And then after 5 minutes, didn't even notice it.
Huh.
So like, yeah, it's like, why would I trade in my PS5?
And guess what?
And that's also assuming that I had one. If I didn't have one, I'd still have to pay $800.
Yeah, here we are, and that's like the situation I'm in. And here's the thing too, like what you're saying, it's like features this, features that. If you make a game that's actually good, you're not going to notice any of that crap because you're going to be in a flow state and you're just going to be enjoying the game. How about you make good games?
Yeah, it's why Nintendo is like thriving right now, is because they just make Nintendo games.
Yes, and it's like, mean Mario Odyssey's a fun game? Do you know what frame rate Mario Odyssey runs at? Do you know what the ray tracing is on Mario Odyssey? No, nobody cares or talks about that. They just say, oh, it's fun, and go buy it.
Yeah, and that's like, I sometimes hear that where people are like, oh, like, these games would be so much better if they were on better systems. Like if they're modern, like if you could play like Xenoblade Chronicles on like a PC. It's like, yeah, it might be a little bit, especially like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 stuttered in some places.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't even notice it. And
right.
Here's the thing, I don't even like Xenoblade 3 that much.
As a game, though. As a game. Has nothing to do with the features.
Has nothing to do with the features. As a game, the story. I didn't like the story.
Exactly.
And a little bit of the gameplay, but it wasn't that bad. But yeah, it's not because the game's on. Like, I'd still play it on Switch, like, because I have the physical version.
Right.
And like, if I ever wanted to replay that game, I could just pop it in on the Switch.
Yeah.
It's just something that, and then this is it's just something that is just like, I don't think it's worth $800.
So, and then here's the other thing
without the vertical stand either.
Right. Vertical stand sold separately. Get out of here. So then here's the other thing. It's $699.99 in the US, and then the stupid disk drive is like $80. So call it $800.
Yeah.
Okay, but then get this.
It's like $800.
This is something that I saw YouTube comments from other people, I guess, who live in other regions that kind of alerted me to this, because you always assume that they're just converting, but then you actually look at it and you pause and you realize, wait, the pound and the euro are worth more than the dollar. So why is it 700 pounds? Right? Why is it 800 euros? And then for Japan, it's 120,000 yen. And the yen used to line up with the dollar like fairly well, or with the penny. Sorry, not the dollar. The yen used to line up as a penny fairly well. It doesn't anymore.
Not in recent years.
Yeah, no. It's it's like points. It's like 0.7 of a penny now. It used to be almost 1-to-1, but still, 120,000 yen is like, I believe, over $800 still. So in America, we have $700, but in every other region, it's well over $700 US. And so there's really no reason for anybody outside of the US to buy this thing, because you're paying an astronomical amount of money for something that is so dumb.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So
I feel like Sony's been screwing over people in other regions for a while, because like after the Helldivers 2 thing that happened too,
right?
They like cut it off in a whole bunch of regions. It's upsetting.
And we have this, and then obviously I'm sure you've heard of the Concord shamble.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing about digital that I want to talk about, with like, because people were saying that their review copies are basically being pulled off their systems.
Right.
It's like a similar thing they have with PT, I think.
Yeah, of course. And that's, there you go, no control. And it's like, yep, you're leaving all the
Yeah,
control in the hands of the companies and not you. So
yeah, it's
that's
so
that. Let's wrap it up.
yeah. Or do you want to talk about, because I did have something I think that's kind of on the physical side of things, but it's less of a rant,
Yeah,
more of
sure.
like a brief discussion on um, something that I think is like a benefit of physical media, is obviously, and you talk about this a lot on your channel, is the artwork
Oh, of
of like
course. It's the whole
the
reason
boxes and the
reason why I
cases
started
and
a
like the
YouTube channel.
manuals. Yeah, and it's I think that's like a huge benefit of physical media, and I think it's why that's another reason why I like getting stuff because or getting physical stuff because like I have a game like I have Final Fantasy 11 on the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
I physically cannot play that game.
No, because it's an MMO.
I have a
Yeah.
PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
You can't play it on the PlayStation 2 anymore.
Yeah, it's an
But I
MMO.
still have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's because I got it for well, not really for the artwork. The artwork of 11's like base version isn't that good, but
Yeah.
like it's still like the case and um I could put it along a shelf with all of my PS2 Final Fantasy games and
Of
all
course, it lines up
that.
right
It's
there, and
yeah.
it's not even called. It's a mainline game, so you got X,
Yeah.
XI. It's great, right?
Yeah, it doesn't just go from 10 to 12 anymore. Or
Right.
10-2 to 12.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
And yeah, it's so like I think having the case and like the box and the manual and stuff is like an extra added benefit that's in that cost.
I'll out myself with this. At the moment, though I have in the past, of course, at the moment, I don't have a PS2 system, but I bought Mega Man 8 for the PS1. I bought Katamari Damacy again, physical copy PS2, and I have coming in the mail soon for the sequel. I'm going to do a video about We Love Katamari, which is the sequel to Katamari Damacy, and I bought that physically. And I don't even have the system, right? I plan on getting one at some point, but it's just not really in the cards right now for me.
I mean, I did. I called you a heathen, but I did do that because I didn't have a PS2 for the longest time.
Yeah,
Because after mine broke when I was a kid.
right,
And I just bought PS2 games. Like I had the Kingdom Hearts games and the Final Fantasy games on PlayStation 2.
right.
And I was like, eventually I'll get a PlayStation 2, and I eventually got one.
Yes,
refurbished.
and it's
like, in good condition.
I'm buying them so that I can talk about the artwork specifically, whereas I have on PC I have the remasters, and it's like, well, even if I had a physical PS2 and the means to record off of it, I would still record off the remasters because it looks so much better and is not letterboxed, you know. So I'd be doing it like this anyway. But yeah, I bought the games for the artwork to discuss the artwork. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
and I was going to segue from
Yeah.
that into one more thing
okay,
because I want to get your thoughts on it.
sure,
And it's the like I think there's certain it's like a thing for cartridges versus discs. And
Yeah.
because you mentioned it before, but I think that there is certain benefits to both.
Totally.
And this is from purely a visual standpoint because I like for cartridges, especially older cartridges, how they could do some crazy cool stuff with the actual casing, like how. And I'm kind of upset that Pokemon doesn't do this anymore, but I get that they don't because the
Oh.
cartridges are much smaller. But they used to.
like
All the
crystals.
mainline games were like the color of the things. Like gold was gold.
Yep.
The whole cartridge was gold. Crystal was like this translucent blue.
And with the sparkles, it's amazing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ruby was this dark red, translucent. Emerald was a translucent green. Like, all
And it
that
makes it
really
easier to
cool.
spot the fakes then too, because you'd see people
Yeah.
with a gray Pokemon Emerald, and it's like, yeah, I think that and it says made in China, and it's like, yeah, I don't know if
Yeah.
that one's real, buddy. You know?
Yeah, or you'll see the one that's Pokemon Green with the green cartridge, and you're like,
Yep.
that didn't even come out in the West.
Right. Right. It's super,
but yeah,
super
like-
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, like I think that's a benefit of cartridges, but I think a benefit of discs, and you might be able to correct me on this because I don't have a ton of older cartridges, is that with cartridges, because I think a lot of game designers at the time kind of expected people to throw away the box.
Uh huh.
Like, so I think for some of the labels on the cartridges, they would just try to not really mimic the artwork on the box, but they would still try to show you like this is still like you'd be able to pick out Mega Man 3 off the shelf. Like you're
Right.
not gonna look at the cartridge and be like, what the hell is that?
Right.
I think a benefit disc is because
Oh
they
yeah.
expected you to keep the case. They could do cooler, like more like wacky designs
Yes,
of
a
the
thousand
artwork on the
percent.
disc.
The disc on
Yeah, like
Katamari is really like silly, where it's just like a little silhouette of the prince pushing a giant ball, right? Whereas
yeah,
the actual box is like completely different from that. So yes, I
yeah,
totally get that. Whereas so many of the NES games, the box and the label are just pretty much the same thing.
yeah. Yeah, because I was thinking of like the example of dot hack, at least for iMock. I forget if it's on GU as
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like they just have like the number of what the volume is, and
That's
like in the
right.
numbers like a character's face,
Yeah,
and it's
I used to own
like
those.
if you
So
didn't have
yeah.
if you just had like the disc on a shelf for some reason, which is blasphemy, but if you just had the
Yes.
disc on a shelf for some reason, or like in a little binder of discs that people used to have,
Yeah.
and like picked it up, if you didn't know that was dot hack, you'd be like, what the heck is this?
What is this 3? Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I used to have the dot hacks, and I don't really remember those discs, but I do remember those cover arts because they were really good. So yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
also love you can line up the spines and they make an image.
and I make an image, of course, and Nintendo Power did that too with their magazines. So yeah, physical media is great, man, and the option of digital is also great. I definitely use my fair share of both, and I have a lot of games on Steam, and I've had that forever, and it's we need options. As consumers, we need options, and
Yeah,
that's really the bottom line. And the point to make with this whole thing is that the PS5 Pro is more money for less options, and that sucks.
yeah. And Sony sucks.
Yep.
As
So
a company, they
yeah,
make some good games.
they sure do, but some recent decisions have been pretty terrible. So with that, I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
let's
they're
wrap
corporate
it up.
decisions.
We're actually getting close to
All
an
right.
hour now. we've
Yeah, I
rambled.
told you we could extend it.
It's all good. So
Professional yapper.
I have a fair share of your gameplay, and luckily, a lot of your gameplay is all like PlayStation games. So I'll do
Yeah.
a mix of probably me playing Katamari because it's a PlayStation game, and then you playing whatever those games are that you play. So
All right.
Kingdom Hearts probably.
Yeah, or Trails.
Yeah, or Trails. One of those. Like I said, I have footage, and then I just need you to send me some pictures of your game room, and I'll throw those up on this too, and then send me your MP3, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
So, with that, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you're as mad as I am about the PS5 Pro, let us know. Leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe. We do these once a month ish, or whenever we feel like it. So I'm gonna stop my recording right now.